You're going to love this. Hey there. Happy Monday. Because we all get excited about Mondays, right? Yeah, no, nobody does. Well, guess what? It's got a regular show today, and we're all here, at least supposed to be. Sean, Sam, Luds, John, and me. So, you know what fans love to talk about? Potential trade targets. And we're going to do that today. Which defenseman might the Stars be interested in? Let's dig into who could be out there right here on the DLLS Dallas Stars Podcast.
Get ready, boys.
No, it's going to be recorded now. So this is the DLS Dallas Stars Podcast. Insert music bed here, right, Luds?
Yeah.
There it is.
It is a Monday, folks.
It is Monday, January 27th. We'll just start over as if it never happened.
Wait, can I see that again? What was that? Yeah, that. What was that arrow with
just browsing.
What, the thumbnail?
You like
Just
it?
browsing. I don't know what it means, but yeah, sure.
Hey, you know when you go in a store and all the sales associates like swarm you and you're not
can I
actually going to
help
buy
you?
anything, so you're like, oh, I'm just browsing.
I don't see the connection, but okay, let's move on.
You don't see the connection.
None. None.
Would
whatsoever.
anybody, Sean, do you want to explain that to Luds?
Go ahead, Sean.
Already.
No,
Sean, right on time.
I don't want to ruin good television or shows, whatever we call this. So this is better for it not to be known. So let's keep going.
No notes. 10 out of 10. Perfect. Sean Shapiro's here. Sam Nestler will be joining us to talk about the Stars practice report from Frisco. Craig Ludwig and I are here in studio, in the podcast studio, along with our producer, John. Maybe we need music, Anderson. Maybe we don't. All right, let's get right to it. We have a big show today as the Stars swept a weekend back-to-back against Vegas and St. Louis. We're going to get Sean's take on some really fun goaltending moments, particularly in both of those games. Luddy, I know, wants to ask Sean about something Jordan Binnington did in the game on Saturday. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And, boy, there already is some controversy about players being possibly hurt or not for the Four Nations and how that affects their rosters. We're only a couple weeks away from teams reporting and getting ready for the Four Nations tournament. All of that coming up on today's show. But let's start with something that I always hate when somebody gets up to do a speech, especially at like a graduation or a wedding toast or something, and they say, so I sat down to write this speech and I didn't know what to do. And they start I hate that. Just get to the speech. So I sat down at my computer this morning to come up with what we're going to talk about on the show. No, I'm kidding. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine over the weekend, and he was asking me about possible defenseman trade targets for the Stars. I think it's pretty fair that we've been targeting a right-handed defenseman because the Stars have a lot of left shots, and if they wanted to add somebody maybe for their top four, that would probably be the preferred side. And without doing a ton of research on it, I said, gosh, I don't really know if I have one that really stands out to me. Last year, Chris Tanev was the no-brainer. You want him. They got him. He made a huge impact. They didn't win the Stanley Cup, but it was the right play at the right time. So this year, I don't know if it's that straightforward. So I went through we know we had a Seth Jones conversation the other day off the air. I don't know. Do we have to talk about it on the air? I don't even remember.
We never did.
I don't think we ever did. We had an off-air one talking about would you go after Seth Jones and could you do that? Sure. We've heard through a couple of different reports that the Stars are not really looking at adding somebody with a ton of term. And part of that has to do with future contracts needed for Wyatt Johnston, more recently, and then down the road, Thomas Harley, who just signed a bridge deal, and Jason Robertson. Not to say that there won't be others down the road as well. And so adding another huge contract with a lot of term might not be in the cards for the way that the front office has planned out their future contract signings. So I looked at only players that are either expiring this year, so meaning UFAs after the 24-25 season, or with 1 year left on their deal after this year, meaning they would be UFAs in 25-26. And I kept it to unrestricted free agents. There are also RFAs out there, aka restricted free agents, and those are younger players typically, and I didn't look at those for today's exercise. So Sean and Luds, I divided them into 4 categories, and I'm going to hit you with some names, and I just want your gut reactions. If you like these, if you don't, if it makes sense, if we're completely barking up the wrong tree.
Sean, keep it short. It's almost time for our first break.
So I have right-handed defensemen that are UFAs this year and then next year, and then for fun, left-handed defensemen this year and next year's UFAs. And Luds, when I look through the right-handed defensemen that are UFAs this year, that's my first reaction. And all due respect to these players, some decent players, nobody stands out as, wow, that's the guy you have to have. Cody Ceci was the first one I wrote down. He's a 31-year-old. He plays for San Jose. Remember, you're looking at teams most likely that may be sellers or at least on the fringe of playoffs, of which there are quite a few right now. Does Cody Ceci move the needle for you at all at 31?
Not much. Not for me. I mean, size, a defenseman that knows who he is. I don't know. No. So the answer is no.
Yeah.
He doesn't jump off the page for me.
Sean, there was a guy from Detroit that would be interesting, but you follow him more than we do. I don't know if he's healthy, and that's Jeff Petrie, because he's 37, and he has a pretty low cap hit because he has his salary retained by 2 different teams, Pittsburgh and Montreal. Detroit's only cap hit is 2.3 of his $6.25 million. But he's also only played in 34 games this year. Is he even remotely healthy?
He's been hurt. He hasn't played for 6 or 7 games now, and with injury and everything like that. And honestly, no, he's not. He's not. He is a. The answer is I would not be intrigued in adding him to my roster. He's not a. The Stars have, and I'm curious Lud's thought on this. My thought on the defense is the Stars don't need more third pairing level guys. They've got enough third pairing level guys. So unless you're bringing me a list of guys who can actually upgrade a pair in the top 2 pairs, I'm not interested at all. That's where I am at right now.
That was our conversation prior to you coming on, Sean, before we even started the show. It's like, who's going to fit in that number 4 hole? That's what I'm looking at.
Right. So as we pretty much well established, and we'll say it on the air because we were talking about it before, Heiskanen, Lindell, Harley, those are your top 3. They've been used a lot, and in doing so, we see the usage. Those are the top 3. And Pete DeBoer said the other day the same thing. He basically admitted, those are our top 3. We're still trying to figure out who's going to be 4, 5, and 6. Right?
Yeah, and I thought Lyubushkin would be our number 4.
Maybe as it stands right now, but he was not.
Obviously, he wasn't.
Did our intrepid Sam ever get more clarification on that? Because I remember, Luds, you were puzzled, like when Pete said, like, we know we're looking for who our 4 is, right? Like, I'm curious. Has anyone asked Pete? What has Ilya not done to be considered 4? Have we gotten that question?
I agree, Sean. Please clarify. Where do you put?
Yeah.
Ilya. I mean, he's not a 5 or 6.
Let's ask Sam when he's on for our next segment and see if he has it. If not, we can put him on an assignment and see if he can pick that up when the team they're on their way to Vegas now because they practiced this morning, but they'll be back before they play Vancouver at home on Friday. Okay, the other names on this year's UFA right-handed, just to go through them real fast: Dante Fabro in Columbus, formerly of Nashville; David Savard in Montreal; Jan Ruta in San Jose; Henry Jokiharju in Buffalo, and Travis Hamonic in Ottawa. Do any of those guys fit the bill for what we're talking about, which is a guy that could be your number 4?
Sean, go ahead.
No.
No.
Okay. So let's move on. next year, these are right shot defensemen that have 1 year left beyond this year, meaning they'll be an unrestricted free agent after the 25-26 season. And this is where it gets a little more interesting. Rasmus Andersson's name has been up a lot this year. I'm not sure why Calgary would want to get rid of him unless they think that he will not re-sign in 2 years or a year and a half. Then you have Jacob Trouba in Anaheim. You have their captain, Radko Gudas, also will be a UFA after next year. Timothy Liljegren in San Jose, who was available from Toronto and traded this year, and the Stars did not show any, or at least not, they didn't trade for him. San Jose did. Connor Clifton in Buffalo and Luke Schenn in Nashville. The number of right-handed defensemen in the NHL are a lot lower than the lefts. Does anybody in that group catch your eye compared to the first group we talked about?
Well, if we're pretending Andersson's available, then Andersson, of course. Like, Andersson would help this team.
Is he your number one choice out of that list? If he was available,
him and then Trouba, yeah, like those two would both help this team. The rest become, that's like Radko Gudas. I think 2 years ago, I'm fascinated by Radko Gudas, but I've watched Gudas play, and occasionally from the big hit on the blue line right now, he's lost a step too. So this is it's the first two, but I don't, as you said, Owen, I don't know why Andersson would be available, and Trouba just got traded, and the Ducks clearly, I think the Ducks are Trouba's going to be fascinating deadline acquisition next year for someone. So, do
you think it needs to be next year, Luds? I mean, sure, Anaheim just traded for him, but think about this. I don't think the Ducks realistically would be thinking that they have a chance to contend for a Stanley Cup next year. They're trying to build something.
If you take everything else out of this whole conversation, money and knowing that his wife decided that she wanted, if we're leaving New York, Anaheim is the place I want to go because I believe she's going to be a nurse or some doctor or something,
nurse practitioner or something like that.
Yeah,
or maybe an MD. I'm not
sure.
So
I'm thinking that there's another say in this whole thing. But if you take all that out of the equation, the guy that jumps out to me is Trouba. You from the beginning of the year, I think he would be the perfect guy to play, whether it's next to Essa or play whatever.
Are you in?
I just I do like Gudas only because of what he brings and the reputation. But I agree with Sean. He's getting a little long in the tooth.
He's 34.
And he's I don't know if he fits into Dallas's what they like to do. But anyway, for me, of all your people, my number one is going to be Trouba. Now, again, like we kind of were guessing and throwing this out there, if they want to pick up half his salary or something like that to be able to fit in, I think that could be, again, like I said, I can see putting Harley on the left side with Miro, and then if you had, Trouba on the right side with Essa, I just look at that pair. You want a shutdown pair and a pair that basically, and there's still the fear factor from Trouba. You always have to keep your head up with that guy as long as he doesn't get suspended. And he's done a pretty good job at walking the line. To me, I would love to have that guy.
Sean, when you were in Toronto and talked to Stars GM Jim Nill, he gave you a great line about how he's so glad that all the media has been writing articles about trade targets because now he knows who to look at, which was hilarious, objectively funny. But these are the kind of exercises that they would have done at the start of the year and continued to go through their scouting departments and make sure that they have all the names that they're on and looking at, and having these conversations and refining it. If you look at left, if you want to get really silly and say, okay, well, Miro can play on his right, maybe Essa can play on his right, and we can squeeze another left shot defenseman in there. The UFAs this year would be Matt Grzelcyk with Pittsburgh, Ivan Provorov. Now, these are left shot unrestricteds at the end of this year, so it could be rentals. Ivan Provorov with Columbus, Marcus Pettersson with Pittsburgh, Ian Cole with Utah. And again, there's others, but they're on teams that are expected to be in the playoffs for sure, so I didn't write those guys down. Ryan Lindgren with the Rangers, that's a big question mark. Brian Dumoulin with Anaheim, Oli Mata with Utah, and Alec Martinez with Chicago. Provorov is the one that kind of catches my eye of that group. What are your feelings about him?
He's the one. Him and Pedersen are the two that at least intrigue me a little bit more amongst this group. I think Provorov is also. I think he adds a little bit of that, a little more of that edge that we talk about the Stars wanting to add a little bit of that. It's not nearly at the Trouba level. I'm not going to pretend that at all, but Provorov adds a little bit of that at least. So to me, he's the more intriguing one, but he's also like, when so often we talk about rentals and things like that, I just can't help. And I know we just like, it's who do the Stars want? Who do the Stars want? But why the hell would Columbus give anyone away? This team is going like the Blue Jackets, right? Like the Blue Jackets are going on this after the tragedy before the start of the season. They're in the playoff race. They're right there. If you're the Blue Jackets, right? Like you're not selling. There's no way you're selling. The thing you owe to that hockey community in Columbus is to go all in to try to build in on this at least. So I have a hard time looking at Provorov and anyone from Columbus, because for me, the reality is there's a much larger and more important community element here where that team has gotten where they are, and that team deserves to be able to fight to the finish for a wild card spot, no matter what it was. So I have a hard time including Provorov because I just don't see how Columbus can sell at all. I just can't see that.
Sean, 100% agree. I would even go as far as my feeling is I would have to get the temperature of the room. I don't know if I'd even add anything, only because of what they've gone through, what they're going through. I'm guessing they have rallied around each other in this whole thing, on and off the ice. And I don't know whether you're a number 6 or number 7 defenseman or the 13th forward, if you, as a group, would say, we don't want him to leave. I don't, sometimes business comes before all of it. But in this scenario, I would say we're keeping this band stays together.
I have one more list I want to go through when we come back on the other side of the break, because there's some others that both Luds and Sean have connections to that I want to get. And then we'll hear from Sam as he was at Stars practice in Frisco here on the DLLS Dallas Stars Podcast.
East-West Shrine Bowl is this Thursday. It's America's oldest college football all-star game, is being held also right here in Texas. On January 30th, be part of history in the making at the 100th East-West Shrine Bowl at AT&T Stadium. Since 1925, the game has benefited Shriners Children's, and its mission is to provide innovative pediatric specialty care to improve and transform the lives of children. See some of the nation's top college football players in this head-to-head competition ahead of the NFL draft. Today's All-Stars, tomorrow's Legends. The East-West Shrine Bowl is served as a starting point for many noteworthy NFL careers, including 80 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and more than 200 members of the College Football Hall of Fame. Tickets start at just $20. Use code DLLS when purchasing 2 or more tickets to receive 50% off. Visit shrinebowl.com to buy your tickets today.
Let's talk about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor activities. One of the models that I like is the tangle-free aviators that, especially if you have long flowing locks like my co-host Craig Ludwig, you put regular aviators with those little nose pieces on, they get hooked up if you put them on top of your head. They'll get caught in your hair. Well, these tangle-free ones don't have that. They sit just like a regular thicker frame pair. Very comfortable, still look great. Unfortunately, Luddy doesn't have a pair to confirm that.
It's a wig.
Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com. Use the code DLLS for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, so Sean and Luds, one more list real quick. And I just looked at the left-handed defensemen that are unrestricted free agents after next season. So 1 year more term than rentals this year. And of that list, there's some interesting names on here. There's the top 2 really stand out to me if you're going to go with another left. And I think the Stars really need a right. But if they went with another left, Jake Wallman with the Sharks, Mike Matheson with Montreal, then we have Cam Fowler who just went to St. Louis, but they could always flip him again. Eric Gustafson with Detroit, Mario Ferraro with the San Jose Sharks, Jamie Alexiak, we all know him, he's in Seattle now, TJ Brody in Chicago, and Ben Sherratt with Detroit. Sean, those first two I would love to see on the Stars, but as you said about Columbus, I find it really hard to believe that Montreal would want to subtract right now, because I don't think that Montreal truly in their front office thinks they're going to win a Stanley Cup this year, but I think making the playoffs is really important for that group.
And Matheson is also 30 years old and like is going to be, I think what they're going to take from this year, they're going to build for next year for Montreal. So I think it's part of the build where that makes sense. And even in, like you mentioned, Jake Wallman in San Jose, and I covered Jake Wallman closely in Detroit, and he's a really, I think he's a much better player than some people realize unless you watch him closely in San Jose or Detroit now. But they're trying to build, and he's 28, and you got to have those guys there. So once again, these are guys where they're great in theory, but to pry them out, if I'm sitting in the GM's chair on the other side, if you're asking for these guys, I start asking for way more than the Stars are willing to give. That to me is the problem with all this is, where are you? At no point at no point when someone on the other line says, okay, cool, I want Leon Bichel, am I willing to continue the conversation? And that's where I keep going with this right now, because I have to put myself in the other team's chair too to understand that both teams are trying to find the better deal in theory, unless maybe you're Chicago and doing what you did to make that trade the other day to get Rantanen and go to Carolina. I don't know, but that's the problem here for me.
Yeah, and then you move a guy like that, and then you got to go out and try to find that same guy that's just got done moving.
It makes no sense for Montreal. But what about Jake Wallman or Jamie Alexiak or Ben Sherratt, guys that I think their teams are not going to make the playoffs? I mean, maybe Detroit will. They're on the bubble of it, but San Jose probably is not. Sean, you covered Wallman a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you said the heck with it, we'll just bring in another left because he makes our top four better?
No, because of how Pete DeBoer is so committed to making sure Miro Heiskanen runs power play one. Jake Wallman is, and I love Jake Wallman's game, and I love watching him play, but Jake Wallman needs the puck. And so Jake Wallman, if you're not going to give him power play one, and I don't want to take it from Thomas Harley, to me, Wallman doesn't fit because you need him to. He's going to need the puck, and I already have Miro and Harley on that. It doesn't fit with this group. The one that is, and I know there's going to be people who think I'm crazy saying this, but the guy whose game that gets ripped apart way more, but brings that gritty under your skin element, and I know it might be, maybe if you could flip him for Matt Dumba, all of a sudden he's not going to be a major upgrade, but he's going to bring some of those playoff elements, is Ben Sherratt. I mean, I know Sherratt has not been particularly great in Detroit, but he brings, if he was not put in a top pair spot, if he wasn't getting the matchups he keeps getting in Detroit, he annoys the hell out of other people. He gets under the skin. That's the thing that I know, the way Sam and Luds and everyone looks at the game, that's the thing that in the playoff series, he can still be that effective. And we saw that recently back when in Montreal, when they went on that cup run. Obviously, that was a bit of a surprise cup run in weird circumstances, but there's still a bit of that in Sherratt's game.
Is that the Sherratt with an R or Shabbat with a B?
With an R.
Okay.
That is a nice callback by Luds.
And obviously, to be clear, that game against Dallas was just it's one of those where when you guys, people are going to hear that and think like, oh my God, we saw that game the other day. That was a bad game. And I want to be clear, that was a bad game. And I'm not pounding the door that's the trade you make. But that is a point where what he adds on a regular when it comes to being able to kill penalties, being able to get under guys' skin, be a little bit of that edge in a lower role, that's what he can do. Now, problem is, once again, Owen, we're talking third pair. Is that upgrading your second pair immediately? No. And this is where we keep coming back to no on this.
And you remember that I kept saying Shabbat, correct? Even though it was Sherratt.
I do. And you had quite the tongue twist.
Yeah, but the reason was I've always liked Shabbat. And again, maybe not so much now, and to be totally honest, I haven't even watched a ton of him in the last year or so. So I don't know if his game has fallen off, but I'd liked him since when he was younger. I thought, I even said something to somebody in the management one time. I said that the Shabbat kid to me would be a nice piece to have. Again, a lot of those things are harder to get. You can just say yeah, but I've always liked Shabbat.
Okay, so if we just move out real quick to the end of this discussion, because we have to get to Sam. He's going to tell us about what he learned at practice today. Other than Jacob Trouba from the panel here, is there an ideal or a desirable option? I mean, there are some good players in these that we mentioned, but it doesn't sound like anybody's clamoring for one of these names specifically. Is that and are we?
Sean has a thought. I can already see it.
I have a thought. I'm not clamoring for a name, but if flipping Gudas for Dumba is my way to get out of Dumba's deal, I'll do that. Very similar money,
Buds?
Similar term.
That's we were talking before you came here, Sean. Only because he can be a reckless player, but he seems to better things happen. I don't know how the best way to put this is. Maybe there's less poor things that happen.
And you wouldn't be asking him to be in your top pairing.
Yeah. I mean, I think regardless of where you'd put a Gudas, and I, again, don't know him personally, but I think, and now he's wearing the C there now, right? So I believe he's got the C on. So I don't know if he would want to leave someplace and say, yeah, I'll be a number 6 over there, number 7. I think he's, in a prominent role where he is. But I've enjoyed watching him play too, because he's a bowling ball coming down the ice, and he's got no qualms about, and again, talk about having players on the other side of the ice having their heads up, and sometimes the plays don't happen the way that they want them to happen because there's a heat-seeking missile out there coming down the road somewhere. That's why I like Trouba too. I think Trouba's got a little bit more to his game, but that's where I'm on both of those guys.
There's that option. There's the option that Ilya Lyubushkin is your 4th, and that you could add an extra in there for your 5, 6, 7 depth. Or the thing we haven't talked about, and I'm not sure who it would be, you could try to upgrade your team with a player with more term that we haven't looked at. But we've heard the Stars are not inclined to look at that right now. But those are really your options. And if you're not blown away by any of them, it'll be interesting to see what the organization does, because I think they see what we see, which is add something up front, add something on your blue line, and go try to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Sean, I want to ask you, so all this we're talking about and talking about them, what does this do to Nils Lundqvist? If someone, is it just a casualty of, man, it's, it is what it is?
Yeah. I mean, you got, and you can upgrade. I think there's actually a really good line from Eric Tolsky in his press conference the other day after he traded for Mikko Rantanen. And he said, I think it was something, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but it was said basically, until you have the 20 best players on the planet, you can always upgrade any position. And I think that's coming from an NHL GM, and that's and I think that's the way to look at things.
Yeah, when it comes to winning championships and things like that, regardless of the sport, feelings don't really matter.
I mean, it's
maybe in the Columbus situation it does, a little different scenario, but typically it's, we got to do what we got to do, for our fans, for our team, for our organization. That's the way it is.
Let me ask you guys last thing before we get to Sam in our next segment. Would it be irresponsible of the Dallas Stars to not add somebody on the blue line for their playoff push?
Yeah, because we keep talking about a window. And I think we were talking about a window a few years ago with Jamie and Tyler. And, and again, those windows close. And right now you have a goaltender that is in that window. So you take advantage of his window. You've got Rupe in that window. You've got Robo in that window, Miro. So it only stays that crack for a certain period of time.
I'll also say this too. A lot of those right-handed D you talked about were like, I don't think that upgrades this. I don't upgrades this. I will say this. If you get to the deadline and you still have the cap space and you can, like Scott Perinovich moved to the Islanders today for a 5th-round pick. If you're at the
talking about him on Saturday about Perinovich, because he was not realizing his expectations with St. Louis.
Yeah. So if you get to the deadline and you've already made another move at forward and you've done this and everything like that, you look at some of these right-handed D. I know people say like, oh, Jim likes to carry too many defensemen. I'm okay if you've made a forward move, you've done something else, and you're at the deadline, you're like, okay, let's grab one of these right-handed D for a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, whatever it is, because I don't want to miss out on a Stanley Cup. I don't want to miss out on a Stanley Cup because I have to rely on an AHL call-up in the playoffs. And that's nothing, no disrespect to what Alex Petrovic did last year or anything like that. But to me, that's where this list comes into play is, hey, you're at the deadline. You've already done your shopping. You've already got your bigger pieces. Some of these UFA right-handed D, you're like, you know what? I'll bring another good guy into the room. They understand the role. They're going to come in and they're going to be competing for playing time. They might not play every night, but we now know we have the depth when and if that injury happens, because we all know they happen. We're going to have the depth. That to me is where this list is important to keep in mind too.
And
okay, so
keeping it in the family, you owe it to Jamie. You owe it to Tyler.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay, so look at that list of the UFAs, the possible rentals, right shot D this year, Sean. If you get to the deadline and they're all available, which one would you want?
And they're all available for the role I'm talking about. Where like, hey, I want that depth. Probably a Savard. Even though, like, I'm amazed to see David Savard is only 34. It feels like he's been around for much longer than that. But to me, it's a Savard, and I mean Fabro's one that comes up too. But right, we talked about the whole Columbus scenario, so it's just
My Trouba's not on that list.
No, because these are rentals for this year.
I know.
You want your Trouba.
Yeah.
Of that list.
I'm taking. Can I punt?
Yes.
I punt.
Okay, so he doesn't want any of them. There you go,
I'm
Sean.
punting.
He wants swing big or stay home.
Ride your top four all the way through the playoffs.
Oh, and that's fair. My point is I don't really give a damn about 5th and 6th round picks. So if I need to add someone else who's just going to be a practice player, but is then going to be my break glass in case of injury, that's how you use this extra cap space. That's where my point goes from this. I'm not saying use an asset that actually is going to turn into anything, but you get to the deadline and you call up Montreal and it's like, hey, we can bring in David Savard. David Savard may play 5-6 games with Dallas, but I'd rather have that insurance policy for a 5th round pick than not have it and then have to. And that's where my thinking goes on this. It is not, hey, this is first case. This is at the end. I am worried about building. And I'm worried about this team winning a cup. And I don't want to say we missed out on a Stanley Cup in the Jamie Benn era, as Lud's talked about, keep it in the family, because we didn't get the insurance when it only would have cost us a 5th or 6th round pick.
Yeah, and 5th and 6th round picks are like a bag of pucks. No disrespect to like Klinger and Jamie Benn and all these other guys that have been later round picks that have turned out.
All right, let's talk to Sam. He's been waiting long enough. Sam reports from practice next here on the DLS Dallas Stars podcast.
But before that, we're going to do an ad that's really feels like a dedication to Sam, since he's the one who sang the Empire Today ad in such beautiful linguistics and everything like that. So with Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, speed. So competitors advertise low quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in their home and your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. They keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Remember their virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how the new floors will look in your home. I think you can just scan it and pop it down, and you can see those beautiful floors. I don't know if you guys are in the studio with the floors, but they can attest to how beautiful those floors are. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive $350 off discount when they use the promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DLLS for details.
All right, let's talk about Sleeper, the best fantasy league platform out there. Put your ball knowledge to the test by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less than their projected stats each week. How about this? I would have written this. I would have said this anyway, but John wrote it because he knows this is the joke. Tonight, the Penguins are in San Jose for a late puck drop, and Lud's favorite defenseman, Erik Karlsson, will net you 4.67 times your money tonight if he scores more than 0.5 goals. With Sleeper, the more picks you combine, the more you can win all the way up to 100 times your money. Sleeper keeps you in the loop with all the instant alerts for breaking news and major injuries, so you stay ahead of the game and keep track of league updates so you're always informed and ready to outsmart your friends. If you think you have what it takes, new users can download the Sleeper app and use the code DLLS Stars to get $55 in free entries when you place a $5 contest. Apply it to any contest, doesn't have to be your first. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. And it's currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right. Welcome into the guy that was throwing a Frisbee by himself and then throwing it again and then walking to get it. It's our very own Sam Nestler. Sam, before you get the practice update, Sean and Luds were having a conversation as part of our defenseman trade target discussion, and they were curious if you've had a chance to talk to Pete about his comment about the top six, or really the top three, and still trying to figure out 4, 5, and 6. In essence, what is wrong with Ilya Lyuboshin's game that he's not considered the locked-in number 4?
Yeah, I have not gotten further clarification on it, only because Pete brought it up himself. And I will. I heard you guys talk about it. I'll definitely ask further and specifically about Lyubushkin. But the interesting point to me about that whole thing was that I believe it was Robert that asked the question. Robert didn't say anything about the number 4. He said, are you still looking for a 5 and a 6? And Pete's the one who actually said, and a 4, 4, 5, and 6. So I'll definitely ask for more clarification. I don't necessarily think it's as deep as we maybe make it, but I will ask and see, because in my opinion, I like we say with this team being better with Dodonov on a 4th line or whatever the example is, this team's probably better if Lyubushkin is on a bottom pair. Now, that doesn't mean they have that or are going to get that where that's the case, but that's kind of the way I take it. But I will definitely ask for some further clarification on using him specifically.
So I know today was an optional, but was there anything particularly noteworthy as they get ready to travel to Vegas to play the Golden Knights for the second time in a week tomorrow?
Only thing noteworthy is Brendan Smith still skating as a forward. Not a surprise after Pete's talked about how he's liked him in that spot. He's had a couple of good games there. They did not call back up Matej Blumel, so as of right now, he is not on this trip. They can call him up still technically by the end of 4 p.m., I believe, is the mark today or tomorrow. But as of now, it seems like they are going to roll with that same lineup. The only thing that still strikes me as odd, and we're gonna ask a little more about it. They so far haven't given us a whole lot when we do ask. Is what's going on with Nils Lundkvist, and is this something where he's battling an injury? Is this something where they believe Dumba's the better option? Is this just to get Dumba games? There's a lot of different angles that go into this, but again, Nils Lundkvist skating super late, doing a bunch of conditioning drills with Brendan Smith and Mason Marchment, and then even after those guys had left, Nils Lundkvist was the last guy on the ice for probably another 15 minutes doing drills with the strength coach, a lot of skating, a lot of conditioning. So it's just kind of been an odd situation in that sense. But as of now, they talked about how he liked the defense, talked specifically about Brendan Smith. And I asked about why he thought he looks more confident and looks the way he has. And he said, look, Brendan Smith is built to go north, right? His mindset is to go hard and go, go, go. And as a defenseman, you don't get to do that a whole lot. The game's in front of you. You're not going as far as much. And he actually, Pete specifically said, we have Miro, we have Harley. Those guys can float and go with the rush and things like that. We don't necessarily need that from our depth defensemen as well, right? We're looking for more of the defensive stability from those guys. So for Brendan, he's just been a little more free and been able to just play his role and go hard. I know Luds loves how he goes into corners and goes on the forecheck, and that's something that they like right now. So they like it enough not to call up any help at the moment.
Yeah, I felt like the Blumel recall, at first I was sitting there wondering, well, if you're going to play Brendan Smith, why even bother? Maybe somebody's dealing with something and they weren't sure about. But then the more I thought about it, it was because they had a back-to-back. And so he was an insurance policy in case they needed somebody. And the fact that they played Smith in both games shows how much they liked him. And because this is a one-off game in Vegas, they don't need to carry that extra forward as long as nobody's even a remote doubt for the lineup tomorrow. So, I mean, theoretically, they could always call him back up. And I believe Blumel actually scored on Sunday in the AHL. But that's okay, right? Nobody of the call-ups yet of the forwards that have been there have been so dynamic on a regular basis that the coaches have been like, well, we've got to keep him in the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely right. Blumel, it's funny. I know you mentioned Blumel needs to score, right? And he did. And he scored technically 2 goals in those 2 games. One of them counted, one of them didn't. But you're right, where they feel like they have the option and they can just accrue some space. Whereas if their option, let's say Brendan Smith was their option and it was way worse than they want it to be, right? Then they need to call someone up. They need that help. Right now they're in a spot where they're like, it's not making us any worse. In fact, maybe it's making us better, a little more physical to have this option. And we're just accruing cap space before the deadline while doing it.
anything's going to make us a little more physical. You know what I mean? To at least have that out there, I think it's nice to have that.
Well, the Stars actually out-hit Vegas on Saturday, and that's not something I've seen them do very much in games this year, because typically they have the puck more, and they're also just not that super physical of a team.
Sam, have you with Smith, have you spoken to him about why he's so comfortable with moving back and forth? Because I do have a follow-up question on this, sir. But first, I'm curious just on that front. Have you picked his brain at all of why he's so comfortable moving back and forth?
Yeah, I talked to him a little bit about it. I actually talked to him in New Jersey about it as well when he was doing the same thing with the Devils, and it was similar to what Pete said. Is that he loves the energy that he has. You talk to the guy for 5 minutes and you can see the energy that he brings just off the ice. That's what he brings on the ice. A similar player, not skill wise, but similar mindset player to Stankoven, who is go, go, go all the time. And it can be really hard as a defenseman to do that with the game in front of you, right? But the other thing, and it goes with all the guys that in this room, is that the way this team has handled their defensemen over the past few seasons, specifically Nils Lundqvist, is on a very tight, small window basis. Whereas, they make a mistake, sometimes that was it, and they were out of the lineup. And that can be really hard to play your game, especially when you are constantly that guy. And Brendan Smith is going to be that guy for this team all the way through the season. He's never going to be a top 4 or top 2 guy. Like, it's just the way it is. So it's a little more flexibility, right? He's not in a role where he makes a mistake and it leads to a breakaway, or he makes a mistake and it leads to a 2-on-1. If he makes a mistake, it's probably on a forecheck or something like that, and it leads to an even rush up the ice. So the freedom, I believe, is his most interesting part about why he likes to do it, and that's exactly what Pete DeBoer reflected.
And Smith too. Like, I think he's a really good example of he's the actual definition of the perfect dude. He's a really good story if you're looking at how do guys stick in the NHL. Before he came on the air, I was doing some research on this. So he played forward until he was 15 as a kid. He actually played on a line with John Tavares and Sam Gagner all the way back in Bantam a long, long time ago. And so I can imagine on that line, even at that age, he probably wasn't the one who was getting the puck. He was probably the hardworking guy. I don't know how that Bantam team worked, but I'm assuming it worked that way. And so Smith moved, and then he moved to defense and played more in junior as a 15, 16-year-old, and then played there at Wisconsin. But the for him, you go back to his switch in the NHL, I think it was with the Rangers during that 2019-20 season, where he was basically told by David Quinn, I want to keep you in the lineup, you're playing well, but I have too many defensemen. And he was then willing to embrace it. So Smith, to me, is that kind of that fascinating story where there's not a lot of NHL players. There's been other NHL players who could have been out of the league in Brendan Smith's case, but then have been willing to do this. So, Sam, while we got you, because it's important to talk the news of this, any news on Mason Marchment?
No, so no update on him. Same status. The only thing could be notable, but also was an optional practice. So they weren't doing lines or anything like that. He wasn't wearing the red no contact sweater. However, like I said, it was optional. They were all wearing green. There were no lines, so the drills were all pretty open. So that could very well just be because of that. But same timeline as of right now. He did have the tape on the nose. It looks like he's doing a lot of conditioning in terms of breathing, which is one thing I think I mentioned on this podcast before, is that the difference between his injury and Dumba's is the damage to the nose could be something that delays it a little bit longer, because when Dumba came back and started practicing with Dallas, he had the bubble, but he was a full participant. As soon as he was on the ice with the team, he was a full participant. So I don't know specifically how much conditioning Dumba was doing before he got there, but Mason Marchment looks to be doing a lot more conditioning, skating, heavy breathing type of things to get himself back into shape and to get his breathing back, because he still has that bandage on his nose, and that is obviously still an issue in the recovery.
And Sam, while we have you, in case you're lost, the bar is 6 feet to your left. And I sent you the code if you'd like to go in there. I'm wondering why you're not in front of my mural in there, but
he's in Frisco, not in Farmers.
Oh, well, it looks
Frisco.
the same. Hey, I want to ask you. Well, they'll go the other way towards the garage then. I want to ask you,
guy?
Big D, that guy. By the way, I think his jersey should be up in the rafters.
That's what I.
Hey, did you get a chance to ask Otter about that accidental on purpose stick thing? What was his opinion?
I did, yeah. So I asked Jake. First off, he didn't see it in terms of watching it more detailed. He just saw the live play. So he just looked like, he said he looked like Binnington lost his stick, but then he gave me a little bit of smirk, and I said, "What are you smiling about?" He said, knowing Binnington, he probably did it on purpose. So which was pretty funny. But the funny thing that Jake said afterwards, he said he's going to watch it and go back so that we can circle back and I can get his full opinion once he's seen it. But he mentioned, I asked him if he's ever done it, and he said he hasn't done it in a game intentionally. Throws his stick at players a little bit in practice once in a while if he's had enough of Jason Robertson or Mason Marchment. But the interesting thing he mentioned is certain guys like Sergei Bobrovsky is one he brought up that kind of does that sweeping poke check a lot, where you see Bobrovsky go to the end of his stick and sweep across. And Jake said that sometimes you'll see as he's sweeping across, maybe it's a 2-on-1 or a tight play around the net. As he sweeps across the front, he lets go of his stick and, accidentally on purpose. And it's not because he's trying to reach out and hit the guy with the puck. It's because he'll leave his stick as he gets across. And sometimes that pass comes across and hits the stick in the slot, which is a really kind of an interesting thing. So I'm going to go back and watch Bobrovsky and see him do it. I remember him doing it once in the playoffs, and I'm sure Sean has ideas of it.
It's a sneaky way when a stick hits another player that it can be, it fell out of my hand. Didn't you see the tip of the blade just caught a skate. So
yeah, I'm going to do this all in 3 minutes before John sends the text to.
It's less than that, guys. We're almost there, but let's carry this over. I want to ask Sean a couple of goaltending things about this, whether it's Binnington or Oettinger, next here on the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast. I think Sean forgot what the clock said. Let's talk
I can't
about.
See the clock. I can't see the clock. There's no clock in front of me. I need a clock shipped to me.
Yeah,
Sean was right, by the way. We did have time, but whatever.
Did we?
See?
I thought we had like 30 seconds.
No, it's 48.
Oh, not 47?
Yeah.
Well, I'm good with this, though.
Thank you very
much.
much.
John is right, but I'm fine with it.
We are on time. Sean, point down at that QR code if you would be so kind, sir. And Sam, you too.
Oh, I'm still here. I didn't even know I was on the screen.
No,
there he is.
Do you want to leave, Sam?
We could tell Sam.
No.
Good stuff, Sam. We appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow for sure.
Good fun, guys. Good fun.
Well, that QR code allows you to get to the DLLS, alldlls.com website, and you can sign up to be a diehard. Look, there's multiple reasons why being a diehard really is a wonderful thing. One is it helps support our show, and our company, DLLS, continues to grow. We continue to get updates from our folks here in the office about how many subscribers we have. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. How many audio streams we're getting. The numbers keep going up. The views, the likes, all the different interactions seem to be getting higher and higher. That's really good. If you sign up to be a diehard, you are supporting us and helping us continue to grow. And the more we grow, the more fun things we can do. Like maybe a DLLS watch party, because they are doing one for the Mavs, the first one ever, coming up on February 6th. Mavs versus Celtics at 6:30 at Cosm. And there are only a limited number of tickets available. You can go to our website, alldlls.com. Diehards get 20% off tickets to this event. Should be a lot of fun on February 6th. But in addition to the watch party, you also get access, if you sign up to be a diehard, to the diehard level writing that Sean and Sam do for the Stars, that the other guys do for the other sports, Mavs, Cowboys, Rangers. And you even get a free t-shirt with each year you subscribe. So you could have one like this, the DLLS flag shirt. You could have it in the black. You could go in the Stars green.
That's serving puck right there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And John's getting a real kick out of that one. So
we'll have to fill Sean in some other time.
With being a diehard, support us, help us out, and continue to grow the show. All right. I wanted to ask Sean one more thing before we get to NHL News and Notes. Sean, Jake Oettinger made 2 unbelievable saves against the Vegas Golden Knights in the dying seconds of Friday's game. The one that everybody's talking about is the glove save on Dorofeev, and it was a great save. One that doesn't get quite as much conversation is the diving save to his left to deny Barbashev with about a tenth of a second left. What do you think about the play of Jake Oettinger, especially considering Ludd said at the end of the night that that's a guy that's making a statement that I'm not going to get beaten tonight, and he wonders if that could be a real rallying point for this team and for Jake?
Well, isn't one of the biggest things we talked about with Jake last year was he was the reason they didn't make it past Edmonton. He lost in the Western Conference Final to Vegas 2 years ago. To me, those are the moments where if you're going to be a top 5 paid goalie in the league, that's when you have to show up. And that to me is just, there's no fundamental reason or anything like this that's a little bit different than the other. It's those are the moments that they're paying Jake Oettinger to be Jake Oettinger. If he wants to push Connor Hellebuck for that Olympic starting job next year, because I think it's kind of hilarious when people bring up, hey, you could push Hellebuck for Four Nations. There's no time. Hellebuck's been the best goalie in the world. But if he wants to push Hellebuck for the Olympic starting job next year for the United States, that's what he needs to consistently do. That's my biggest thing, is own the moment right like that.
Yeah, Sean, that's where I was going, was with the Hellebuck thing. And it's kind of when I said statement, it's like, I'm here. I know all the talk for the first 3 months, and rightfully so. It should be about Hellebuck. He's been great, but don't forget about me. I'm here, and whenever the time comes, I'm going to be here. And I think that was the important thing that stood out to me when that happened.
And for like with Oettinger, right? Where, say, I don't know, I'm assuming Hellebuck's going to get game 1 in Montreal to start Four Nations. It's a quick tournament, though. Say that game against Sweden, say that game against Finland. Say Hellebuck struggles. You're telling me Team USA isn't going to remember what Ottinger's done recently? Those are the things where, as Lud's talked about, those statements that can reverberate in people's brains when needed.
I'm glad you mentioned the Four Nations, because we go to NHL News and Notes. That is one of the things we need to talk about. Is Alex Pietrangelo has withdrawn from Team Canada's roster due to injury, but he's still playing for Vegas. And there was a follow-up today. There was some conversation over the weekend about how the NHL, because this is an NHL tournament. This is not the Olympics run by the IOC or IIHF. This is an NHL event. And the Deputy Commissioner, Bill Daley, reportedly said today that the league will not apply the same policies that it has for players that skip the All-Star game. If you don't play in the All-Star game after you get selected, you have to sit out the first game afterward, because they don't want players who don't want to go saying, oh, I'm hurt, and then just being totally fine. How is this going to affect the Dallas Stars and Thomas Harley specifically? Because, I mean, Sam talked to him today and said that I guess he asked DeBoer about Thomas's future playing for Canada, and Sam said his question was something to the effect of maybe not right now for Four Nations. And DeBoer said he doesn't know if that's true, and that both Harley and Johnston should be in those conversations as they get closer to the tournament.
That's good lawyering and good work by Pete to make sure he brings Wyatt into that conversation. That's well done. Yeah, I asked this the other day on Twitter, and then I said this to you on our pre-show call today, Owen, where I'm not saying that he's the best choice or he needs to be locked in, but if you were going to look at play amongst Canadian defensemen right now, how is Thomas Harley not amongst your top group? I know he's not a right-handed shot, and that all comes into play, but he is making that statement. Let's talk about a statement Ottinger's making to try to keep in people's mind when it comes to trying to supplant Hellebuck when opportunity comes. Harley, to me, is having the campaign this year that puts him in the conversation where maybe people take notice and be like, you know what? This guy might be on our Olympic radar in 2026 because of what he's doing. And that's where I kind of just start thinking about Harley right now with this.
For this year, there's too many other guys ahead of him.
Yeah.
Isn't Doughty supposed to be getting help? When's his recovery
thing? I talked to Drew Doughty's dad today. Actually, I was at the King's dad's.
See, that's called a segue.
It's a great segue.
You
guys talked about it beforehand.
But trust me, we didn't.
The Kings are on their the King's dad trip is coming through Detroit right now. So I was down in the rink this morning there, and I was talking to our old pal Scott Burnside too, and Drew Doughty's father, and we were chatting outside the Kings locker room. And Doughty spoke yesterday actually to the media for the first time since his injury, which is set up strategically. He is going to play sometime within the next 3 to 4 games. He's not playing tonight, and he's going to play sometime in the next 3 to 4 games. And Team Canada is definitely going to watch those couple games because he is.
Boy, that's not a lot of runway though before the tournament, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. But he's also, they expect him when he comes back into LA. You talk about a lack of runway. It's not like there's any ramp up with what Doughty does. He's going to come back and he's going to play 28, 29 minutes for LA right away. That's what's the reality.
Sean, would would Team Canada, or can they take a couple extra players? Like, I mean, my opinion, I'm thinking just off recency bias, but Chris Tanev is a guy, and Taze is a guy, but would he consider going, or can they take an extra guy in case he's somewhere down the road ready in this short tournament?
So the thing with naming a replacement that they have, I don't know about bringing extra, but I did know, I have been told that, and I think it's publicly out there, February 11th is the deadline for roster replacements. So, and that's technically, the first games are February 12th and everything like that. So I guess you could, I don't know if there's any rule against it. This is a completely brand new tournament made by the NHL. So I don't see why you in theory couldn't bring a couple guys to practice on the 10th and the 11th or whatever they're going to do, and then make your decision on the 11th. So it's a good question, Liz. I don't know the full answer, but what I do know is the 11th is that set your roster day. So, but there, and then the first game is the 12th.
What actually is their roster size? Like, what are they eligible to carry? Like, is it an official size?
I think it's 25. I believe it's 25. Owen might have the list right in front of him right now. I believe it's 25.
Okay.
I actually don't have it right in front of me, but I could look it up. But I actually want to pivot here because we were talking about goalie saves earlier. Sean, I know you saw this, but I wanted our viewers to see this. Charlie Lindgren on Saturday made an unbelievable save against the Vancouver Canucks. The Capitals are down a goal, and Lindgren is on his way to the bench for the extra attacker late in the game. Right here, hold it right there, John. Ovechkin turned the puck over just inside the blue line, and Lindgren realizes, they're going to, we don't have the possession. And Vancouver, go ahead, now quickly moves it up to Phil DiGiuseppe at the red line, and this is where he's starting to pull the trigger right now. There, it's off his stick. Lindgren goes to a knee, stretches out. It hits his glove right there, and he comes down with it. And Sean, the part I loved the most was at the last frame here. He's about to get his feet under him, drop the puck, and set it up to go again. He didn't just make the save to hold it. He's thinking, we got to get it up the ice again. And then there's one more shot I had him do from the other angle, which is just ridiculous. What'd you think of the Superman save for Charlie Lindgren?
Are you ready for my super nerdy goalie thing on this? There's only 5 goalies in the NHL that can make that save because Charlie Lindgren's right-handed.
I was just going to say, it pays off to finally find a righty that can take advantage of it.
Yeah. That's a shot where if he's left-handed, you're coming down and you're crashing, and you don't have. If he's left-handed, he's catching with his left hand is dropping quicker. You're not getting the extra delay to catch with the right hand. So the only goalies who can also make that save from that position being right-handed, Yaroslav Askarov, Logan Thompson, who just got a big paycheck. Talk about great segues right here. Logan Thompson just got paid. Charlie Lindgren, obviously the other Washington goalie who made this save. Vejmelka, Louis Domingue, I believe, is also right-handed. And then
what was the money?
I would say try to make that same case to Derek Jeter that he couldn't grab a ball.
The
like
shortstop
that.
in the hole, right?
Yeah.
Well,
what was the money for Logan Thompson?
If we want to talk about Derek Jeter's defensive inefficiencies, we can definitely talk about that because he was by far not the best defensive shortstop in New York City during that time. I digress.
Here we go.
Somebody a little bias here. Nerve?
No. Well, we'll go on. Well, somebody is a long struggling baseball fan who, for some reason, thought Ray Ordonez hitting 1 home run per year was a reason he could somehow make Major League Baseball. Because if a guy could hit 1 home run a year, that meant maybe I could do it. So,
in case you didn't know, he's a New York Mets fan.
Okay.
And that's long
Well, obviously there was something going on.
There's
here.
long suffering going on there for sure. Do you have the numbers for Logan Thompson right in front of you?
I do.
That's right, Johnny.
5.85 AAV, 6-year deal.
How about that?
So,
Logan Thompson getting traded at the draft from Vegas, goes to Washington, and he's been really, really good for them.
Yeah, and Thompson too. And I know, John, we're going to go to break here in a second, Owen. Just read for our TV folks. Logan Thompson is now kind of in that conversation with Joel Ward, or I think Joel Ward probably as like probably the best players to go the Canadian college route and then reach the NHL. I think him and Joel Ward are probably the best two at that. So, or most successful NHL careers from that. So, yeah. Anyway, Owen's got a note for you, TV people.
Thank you to everyone who joined on our TV platforms. Make sure to like and subscribe here on the pod and check out alldlls.com. Okay, back to the show. Let's finish up our NHL news and notes with a couple of tidbits from the weekend. Did either of you guys see the Colorado-New York Rangers game? It was a wild finish. The Rangers tied the game at 4 with about 3.5 minutes to go, third period. Then they almost immediately get a power play. They don't score. Cale Makar was the guilty party, although it was a little bit of a soft call. With 20 seconds to go in the game and it looking like 3-on-3 overtime is looming, and the Rangers on a 10-game point streak, Makar comes out of the box, comes back into the defensive zone in time to pick off a D-to-D pass, start a 3-on-1 the other way, and Arturi Lehkonen scores from Makar with 14.7 seconds left, and Colorado wins the game 5-4. And the Rangers 7-0-3 10-game point streak comes to an end. The Rangers have been playing a lot better lately, which is a good thing for them, but this is why it's tough, Luds. They went points in 10 straight before the loss on Sunday, and now that stalls, and they're still 3 games behind the second wild card. They've been in such a big hole. Are they really good enough to get back into this after the depths they had?
I think there's a bucket full of teams that are going to get into the playoffs there, or at least have an opportunity. And again, they've come out of the hole and they put a good stretch together here, and maybe they're saving Chris Drury's job, the way that's going about it. And then they got a guy back. They got a guy back there
they have a world-class goalie. Yeah, maybe
they
the
got
best
a guy that seems to be, taking it serious now. So I wouldn't count him out now. I think we all have them in our finals, don't we?
Yeah, we thought they were going to be. I just wonder,
yeah.
Are they better than the absolute circus show? The Trouba stuff was a huge distraction for them, and it really affected their team. Yeah. And I think the Mikko Rantanen stuff, we talked about it over the weekend. Rantanen traded to Carolina. I'm sure, Sean, you've seen some of the reaction where I saw the reporting that said Rantanen was completely caught off guard and said he was willing. He told several writers that he was willing to take significantly below his market value to re-sign with Colorado, and he was completely shocked they traded him.
To me, this is the post divorce, everyone telling their side of the story. Just call it what it is. Like, I'm sure Rantanen was willing to take some money under the level of it, but clearly not to a level that was one where he would have stayed in Colorado. So the whole thing where he was completely shocked and he was this person who was willing to live in the poorhouse to stay in Colorado. It's a pretty funny narrative that's being pushed right now. I believe that he was willing to take a little bit, but he is a little bit less, being $500,000 less. Like that like under market value is both sides are trying to make themselves look good at the end of a deal after a divorce.
Yeah, it depends on what you mean by under market value.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because when he's going to sign his next deal, the salary cap is going to be different. They're worried about McKinnon, but, and I think McKinnon's taken, 15% of the cap currently. So Rantanen can take a couple percent or whatever less than that and still be making more than McKinnon. So if you want to look at it, he's really not trying to say he's over that. But Sean, I'm curious, did you happen to hear the interviews between the head coach and I think it was McKinnon after the Boston game, their reaction to the trade?
Yeah, how McKinnon's was how, like he said, never in a million years did he think that Rantanen wouldn't be a member of the Avalanche and everything like that. And so that to me is that's a fascinating dynamic to see how that all plays out. I had something that somebody pointed out to me who happens to be an Avalanche fan. They asked me if I had told you that the last game Gabriel Landeskog, Nathan McKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen would all play together was like when they were passing the cup around, that they would never play another game together, would you have believed me? And that's kind of a crazy thought for me. Obviously, Landeskog missed all of last season, and we never know. But like, you think about that, right? Where that was the final moment for that trio that now is effectively over. So that was those players in that room, and I know some people who cover that team and everything like that. They were pretty sideswiped by it. I don't think Rantanen. Here's what we'll go with this. Rantanen's agent is the one who depends on how much Mikko wants his agent to tell him back and forth, because this is also something from a Stars perspective, because everything connects to the Stars, and I'm drawing a complete blank on their name right now, but Rantanen's agent is also Leon Draisaitl's agent, who is also Thomas Harley's agent. So everything connects back to the Stars in some way. And so how do they operate? Also, Wyatt Johnston's agent too, by the way, if you wanted to even more connections on how all of this goes. How Rantanen was told and whether Rantanen wanted to hear about the inner workings of it all, that's the answer I would really like some truth serum on, of how surprised he was, because there's no way the agent was surprised.
I'm trying to pull it up really fast here because you got me curious on it now. Andy Scott is the agent
Andy,
for Thomas Harley.
Yep.
Yesterday, Winnipeg won, Colorado won, and Minnesota won. The three teams that I think are the ones you have to keep an eye on in the Central Division, battling for position with Dallas. Look, one day to the next, those things are going to happen, whatever. But after a shakeup, Nate just played pretty well on Sunday for Colorado. Rantanen, the old line, Luds, is that whoever gets the best player in the trade wins the trade, even if the other one is value. Rantanen is the best player in that trade. Now, Martin Necas is a fantastic player. He has term, and he's going to be good with the high-flying Colorado scheme because that's what Carolina does. They play a very aggressive style. But Mikko Rantanen is a different element altogether.
I'm baffled by it. Even when it happened, I'm like, I didn't think it was real either, and that's just respect for the player. But he hasn't signed it either. So I mean, they've got to find a way to sign him in Carolina, and I'm just the whole Chicago end of the thing. I do think Taylor Hall going to Carolina is going to help him. I think Rod Brendamore is going to like that guy. I mean, the way he skates, and that's kind of their game. So we'll see. I mean, probably going to be third line guy, but regardless,
what a difference to go from the current state of the Blackhawks,
yeah, to
Carolina as far as like prospects of winning.
Well, that's why when the Blackhawk thing, I don't understand the whole thing. I mean, but I just wonder because Rantanen's got to be signed by somebody at the end of this year. And I know that Aho, and it sounds like they're really good friends. And so that might be a relationship that they have there. But wouldn't it be something if Rantanen and Bedard were teammates?
That's interesting.
I mean, if they got a ton of money. But regardless, I just worry. Now, I don't want to worry about anybody, but I go back to the interviews I listened to, and it truly sounded like McKinnon and Bednar, the head coach, were caught off guard. And maybe the coach made it sound like that. I'm just curious that it doesn't get run through at least the head coach from what Joe Sakic is doing. And maybe that did, and he played it like I didn't know anything. But even McKinnon, and I've always been a guy where, if you're a GM, you have to have good relationships with, not as much as a coach does, but you have relationships with your players, and especially your top players. And I just wondered, McKinnon being caught off guard. I don't know if that upsets a player. I don't know if it upsets a coach, or it's just doing business. But, they're two dominant people in the sport, and one Stanley Cup for your organization. I would think you would run some of that through those guys or buy them.
Yeah. The thing for me that I just kind of struggle with right here is, even if you were going to let him walk and let Rantanen walk in the summer, isn't your chance like make him your rental, right? Like make him your piece where it's like, we're going to try to win one more cup with these guys. And you know what? Winning a Stanley Cup there, that just maybe that like that part to me is the whole Colorado thing that is the most. I get where it's like, you got to recoup something. But we talk about windows in Dallas. You talk about winning Stanley Cups. You talk about guys going after rentals. It wouldn't Mikko Rantanen keeping him been the best rental possible?
Exactly. I mean, where are you going to find a better? And Nate's just like you said, he's a good player, right? He's fast and he transports the puck up ice. He flies. He's a right shot. I think he is. He's probably, does he a 30-goal guy? I'm guessing he's probably 30, 40. I mean, you know, with playing with them guys, he will. But isn't he kind of, well, this isn't fair to say. I was just going to say, isn't he kind of like McKinnon? He's not. But where do you use him now? Like Rantanen, to me, as a lefty, there was always that threat of the McKinnon back to Rantanen, Rantanen McKinnon, and Rantanen could finish. And he has a nickname Moose for a reason. I mean, he plants himself in front of the net. Now, Natchez has probably got a pretty good deal. I mean, it's $5 million, $6 million. I don't know.
6.5.
And is he going to be up in a year? I think it's a year. They said he's got to have a contract doing a year or a year and a half or something like that.
I believe he has another year after this year. So,
well, how do you play that guy on that power? Is he going to take Rantanen's place? They're both righties.
And Natchez is also, to me, this is the other thing that doesn't make as much sense. Is one of the reasons Rantanen works so well with that's on that power play, right? It was you. I remember being at a game in Denver earlier this season, and you go through and you watch that power play. I was sitting with someone behind the goal area, and you watch McKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen. You watch them zing that thing around, that 3-man unit on the power play. You watch the way it's impressive. Natchez is a shooter, and now I'm not, like we talked before. Like he's a shooter. He's a guy who gets the puck and fires on the rush and joins the play and coming and so I'm not saying he can't play with McKinnon. I believe Nathan McKinnon can play with anyone, but in zone, what does Nathan McKinnon mean? Nathan McKinnon, like Jonathan Drouin's not going to go clean up guys around the crease. Natchez isn't going to go clean up guys around the crease. Now this puts more on McKinnon to be the bull by himself when before he had Rantanen there. Like Colorado.
It doesn't to find a trio like that, like you talked about, that can do those kind of things, and then take one of those. I mean, Dallas has got one, right? I mean, when we see Rupe and Duchesne and Robo and Harley zing the puck around and shoot the puck at the net and score goals, but it's hard to develop that chemistry between three guys, and then you've got three superstar guys that. Every time a penalty killing unit goes out there against them, and especially going into a game, and you know how good those guys are, you're like, we got to stay out of the box. We can't, don't give them that opportunity. And now I don't know. I don't know. I just wonder if there's a different play going on here.
You brought up Val Nichushkin's name.
Yeah, I
said we were talking about it over the weekend.
But Val's not him. Like that can move the puck around. Like Val is that house that sets up in front of the net. You can't move him. And he's tough along the wall. I just think that Rantanen's more of a playmaker than Val is, especially with McKinnon. I think those guys were dialed in on the same page, so to speak.
Sean, they opened up some cap space. I know they have the Landeskog LTIR. Seems like Colorado's not done here.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're Colorado, you owe it to, especially that room, like Lud's talked about the reaction. Like, if I'm management in Colorado, I'm having a conversation with Bednar and McKinnon in my leadership there of like, hey, we don't worry, we're going to do something else, because I feel like we talked about the Stars owing it to Ben, to the Jamie Benn window and everything to go and do something. Like if you're Colorado, if you're going to open up that space and you're going to give away a guy who was a leader and a cultural touch point for that room, let's call him what he was, you got to do something, right? So you have to do something else. And so I don't know where and what Colorado is going to do, but all of it is going to feel, though, to me, there's no realistic move, and I'm using the word realistic because I know there's a ridiculous other thing that's being thrown out about what could be happening, but there's no realistic move.
You're talking about 87, aren't you?
Yes. And I'm like, there's no realistic move that brings you to that lineup what Mikko Rantanen had.
It just seems like if you're those guys that and you mentioned Makar and McKinnon, like you ripped away an opportunity for us to win a Stanley. You didn't rip it away, but
you made it much harder. You made it a lot harder.
I'm going to bring it up real quick, even though it's kind of a conspiracy theory here. But Luds, Sean's referring to the idea that they partially made this move because
I know you want to put the
Sidney
two guys
Crosby from Nova Scotia
put the two guys
is going to go to Colorado and play out the end of his.
God bless
McKinnon.
Crosby. He's not Rantanen. I'm sorry, he's not. He was, but he's not anymore.
And also, how many times does Sidney Crosby have to say, "I want to finish my career in Pittsburgh"?
Yeah, exactly.
Like how many times does Sidney Crosby have to say that for people to believe it? Right? Like, there's the whole. I mean, Sidney Crosby but he is side by side compared to Mario. Mario never played for another team. There's the only way that Sidney Crosby doesn't play for the Penguins is the same way that Mike Modano didn't play for the Stars for a season, where it's the end and a GM makes a tough choice that, you know what, he's not an impact player anymore. Sidney Crosby is still an impact player. He's not Rantanen right now, but he's still an impact player. And I don't know how many times that guy can say, I'm never going to play for another team.
Maybe they're going to put Erik Karlsson. They'll take Karlsson and put him up there in Rantanen's spot.
Oh, you think Luds, I would love to see Erik Karlsson hop on the power play and then get to practice and try to take the first unit spot from Cale Makar. I would just love to see the fly on the wall where Karlsson walks into the office and he's like, okay, this is me in spot one. I'd love to see that.
Move Cale over. Move Cale someplace up. You know how many outnumbered rushers are going to be shorthanded chances going the other way? Good luck on that.
Well, it's an interesting discussion, and we thank everybody for sticking with us as we went through some of those. Especially, I mean, the Rantanen trade, it reminds me of the Tkachuk for Huberdeau in the offseason a couple years back. The Joe Thornton back to from Boston to San Jose, and I think it was 2005.
Huberdeau was a Hart Trophy candidate. There's a difference. No, there's you talk about Rantanen being like Huberdeau was a Hart Trophy candidate. Like, yes, Tkachuk, Florida got the better end of the deal. Huberdeau had 100+ points. He was a Hart Trophy candidate. This is not.
Well, Natchez is a darn good player. I'm just saying, as far as big trade that caught people's attention and wasn't something that you saw.
Okay. I can see that part. I can see that.
I'm not trying to compare them as like for like. I'm talking about big trades that surprise people. Okay. Can you think of any others that would be better, Sean?
I mean, there's not many in season in the NHL. That's why the NHL. So
who?
I'm just laughing.
I'm already packed up.
Well, he's back.
It's a good way for us to roll our eyes at each other as we wrap up the show. You guys
go on for hours.
We have a game tomorrow night. Stars are in Vegas. They play the Golden Knights for the second time in a week and the third time in the final time in the regular season. And it's a 9:00 game. So that means an 8:30 pregame show. Luds and I and Sam.
You know how they're going to do tomorrow night?
How are they going to do?
John, how are they going to do tomorrow night?
I don't know. We can talk about it in the pregame show that we have tomorrow.
Oh, he doesn't have the button.
He doesn't have the button.
He doesn't have the button. He doesn't have the button.
I don't even know. I'm so brain mushed right now, guys, and I've had to go to the bathroom for the last half hour.
He's like, wrap it up.
My mind does not drop, not melded to the drops right now.
Luds, reopen your laptop. Make him nervous.
We're going to talk. I do have one more segment we could do. No, big thank you to Sean and to Luds and for Sam and for, of course, Mr. Cross's Legs, producer John. I'm Owen. Thanks for joining us. Sean's trying to get some fireworks or laser lights to wrap. It's not working.
No, it's not
working. Here on the DLS Dallas Stars podcast. We'll see you tomorrow night.
City. We all silly like the